What I do reject is the ANC bringing down to nothing every single local authority in South Africa and all the media focusing on bringing a poster down. That is what I reject.
A day after the resignation of one of her staunchest allies over the same matter, our interview reveals how DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zille is unhappy with the decision of the executive she chairs. In fact, why she is at odds on the Phoenix Posters saga. Could the DA's unraveling cost the party dearly at the polls?
We're not going to change any candidate, but come after the 1st of November, we can sit down and discuss. ANC officials, meanwhile, are having their hands full. A day hardly passes without them being confronted by members who are unhappy with the way the party has managed candidate lists. Will the party top brass be able to placate the disgruntled lot till after the election? And if so, at what cost to the party's election prospects? We'll also bring you some news from the campaign trail. All of that and more coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. The Phoenix Posters saga continues to take its toll on the Democratic Alliance. And among those who have been suffering in silence since the party made an about turn and took the controversial posters down is their usually outspoken Federal Executive Chairperson. Helen Zille is not happy with the party's decision to take down the Phoenix Posters, but has apparently let it slide. One of her staunchest allies, though, couldn't do the same. A shocked and horrified Mike Waters, in his resignation letter, says the party's groveling apology and decision to take down these posters is appalling and a betrayal of the heroes who defended lives during the period of violence and looting. On Saturday afternoon, I briefly sat down with the DA's federal chairperson, first to understand why she has had to spend a month in Nelson Mandela Bay, babysitting, as some have referred to it, DA mayoral candidate Ngaba Banga. I then went on to ask what her views were on the whole Phoenix Poster saga. Here's how the conversation went. Helen, thanks very much for agreeing to this short interview at such a short notice. So, tell me, whose idea was it that you should come and park here in Nelson Mandela Bay?
It was the leader, John Steenhuisen's idea. He has asked various people to go to various places for the election. It's more effective than having us jumping around from place to place, and certainly more beneficial than having me stuck in an office. And here I can get down, really doing what I love, being with people, campaigning on the ground, and I'm doing that in Nelson Mandela Bay.
And you're not here to babysit Ngaba Banga?
That's so absurd. I don't know who came up with that idea, but of course our opponents will always come up with pejorative labels for us. I ignore it and carry on.
So what exactly will you be doing over the next 3 weeks or so?
Well, I'm part of a team. I don't come here and say this is now what we're going to do. Obviously the team in Nelson Mandela Bay already have a plan, and it's a very good plan, and they have a grid of daily activities and they're rolling those out, and I fit in and help as much as I can wherever I can. So we've already had 2 events today. We have numerous events every single day, speeches, interactions with people, and I'm on the ground all the time.
What's your strategy?
Our strategy: votes as we can on the 1st of November, and govern Nelson Mandela Bay and many other places if we can.
From where do you think you're going to get these votes?
Well, we're going to get these votes from voters who understand that good government makes a difference in their lives, makes a fundamental difference, makes a difference to the investability of their cities, makes a difference to the quality of their lives in terms of all the basics: sewerage, water, electricity, refuse removal, roads. All these things are local government competencies, and people know what a big difference it makes when a good government, an honest government that does not steal people's money, gets into office.
You're not targeting any specific groups of people?
We are targeting voters, and no vote has a color. All votes count the same in the ballot box, and that is what we're going for.
Well, this is a municipality, of course, you've in the past been able to be at the helm of as the Democratic Alliance. Things, of course, went awry. Have you done any analysis of what went wrong when Ethel Trollip was in charge, the mayor here?
Well, when Ethel Trollip was in charge as the mayor in a coalition here, we had a very rocky coalition with three other parties: the UDM, the ACDP and COPE. And coalitions are by definition very unstable. And tiny parties have the balance of power, and they have their own agendas, and they can take you out of power overnight by simply switching their vote. And that's what's happened. So that's why we say to people, if you want stable, delivering, honest, hard-working government, give us 50% plus 1. That's what we need.
Well, in the event you don't get it and you're forced to enter into a coalition arrangement, have you figured out how or what the principles of that coalition would be in the event you're forced into?
Well, we've been very clear on this point. We don't enter coalition discussions before an election, and we don't think of the permutations of a coalition before an election, because it all depends on what the outcome of the election is.
But shouldn't you be having some guiding principles at least?
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, talking to people who were involved, there seems to be consensus around the fact that the coalition didn't work, not because it couldn't work, but how, as the Democratic Alliance, you actually handled the coalition arrangement.
Well, I've run a coalition of 7 parties in Cape Town. And I can tell you that coalitions are very, very difficult to manage. Now, I wasn't inside this particular Nelson Mandela Bay coalition, but of course we have principles by which we enter negotiations. We have a clear set of values in the Democratic Alliance, and they come into play very strongly when we do coalition negotiations.
Well, it's those principles that I'm particularly interested in, because one would imagine that with the experience you had, you wouldn't want to be blindsided. You would want to enter into any coalition with a set of principles, guiding principles, to avoid the mistakes you made the last time around.
No, last time around we also had a set of principles. And I can
what
tell
went
you,
wrong then?
Well, what goes wrong is that people say they share your principles in the negotiations, but afterwards they don't. One of our guiding principles is zero corruption, transparency, not serving self, serving the public. But very shortly after that, the deputy mayor, who was from a different party, started running his own agendas and pursued them in a way that was totally incompatible with the values that we had agreed on. Because values are very, very easy to agree on theoretically. They are much more difficult to apply in practice. And that is always a core difficulty in a coalition.
Where was the coalition managed, if I may ask? Because there's differences of opinion. There are people who feel that at central level, the Democratic Alliance wanted to run the coalitions without without fully appreciating the dynamics on the ground, and you weren't able, I'm told, to actually allow, you know, the local guys to have a bit of latitude, because they know better than, you know, you as the national leadership of the Democratic Alliance know.
Well, it depends what you mean, Vuyo, by latitude. Obviously, we're not going to allow people to do latitude with corruption. We're obviously not going to do latitude with tenders and contracts for cronies. We're not going to allow the kind of latitude that enables, let's say, the Premier Mabuyane to use public money to upgrade his house. We're not going to use that kind of latitude whatsoever.
I mean, would an Athol Trolley, would he have done something like that?
He would never have done that. Of course not. I'm not saying Athol Trollip would. I'm saying his coalition partners might. And that is where you don't allow latitude.
I'm talking about giving your local guy latitude to be able to, you know, judge certain situations, you know, and strategize around the people and the situation that he or she is confronted with, without you having to impose from the top.
Well, I can only tell you one thing. I was the leader of a coalition government with 7 parties, highly complex, from across the spectrum, often incompatible philosophies, and I didn't feel any micromanagement from the DA at the top, none at all. I obviously reported and said to them what we were doing and why we were doing it, but never once was I micromanaged, and never once was I told what to do from the top.
You don't know of any person that the national leadership of the Democratic Alliance micromanaged, leading or contributing at least to the collapse of these coalitions. Remember, it's not just Nelson Mandela Bay, it's also Tshwane, it's also Johannesburg.
I can only talk about my experience as the leader of a coalition. You will remember that after 2016, I was no longer the leader. I stepped down as the leader in 2015.
But you're still there.
I wasn't there. I was focusing on running the Western Cape as Premier. I had no role in the national leadership of the DA, no role in running the coalition, so I can't speak with any inside knowledge of that. I can only speak with inside knowledge of my own experience leading a 7-party coalition.
Do you think you're going to get the outright majority that you want?
It's always incredibly hard. You know, in 2016 we just missed an outright majority by 12,000 votes only, and about 14,000 DA voters had not come out to vote. And if they had come out to vote, we would have got a clear majority. So it's always tragic when people decide, for whatever personal reason they may have, that they're not going to vote on the day, because everybody lives with the consequences for a long time after that. And you know, the hangover after an election lasts 5 years. You don't just take a grandpa and a cup of coffee and it goes away. It really is a very, very bad consequence, that bubble us. So this time we're here and we're going to work as hard as we can, but it's up to the voters. Do they want good government, or do they want failed, corrupt government? That is the choice. And there are only 2 parties big enough to be in government in Nelson Mandela Bay. One is a yellow party, the other is a blue party. And if you compare the blue and yellow governments throughout South Africa, the blue party has a track record of being excellent in government, and the yellow party can't point to a single example anywhere in the country that they've governed well.
Well, best of luck to you and your team, but I can't end this interview without having asked you this. Just what are the DA federal chairperson's thought about the SABC this past week?
Let me tell you one thing, and I've spotted it a long time ago, but this last week just reconfirmed the trend that we are going into. It is a trend where a failing state, governed by a majority, is looking for excuses. And we're into the era of scapegoating minorities. It was first white people, cut the throat of whiteness, kill the Boer, Drive whites into the sea, we know where that comes from, that kind of answer. Now it is all Indians are racist. This is evil stuff. Evil, evil racial scapegoating of minorities. And we all know where that leads.
But the advert was yours. It was the DA's.
Excuse me, the
Whatever
narrative...
anyone may have said or done. We're talking about the Democratic Alliance instructing an agency to come up with a poster that said what that poster said. Now, you have to take responsibility for that, whatever any other person may have done.
You know very well that that was not a decision by the Democratic Alliance. But that aside, the root cause of everything has been the scapegoating of a vulnerable minority, the Indian community, as being the people who were evil, when most of them were simply protecting their lives and property as a consequence of the failed state that ran away in the face of an insurrection. That is the root problem, and stop deflecting that problem. Because that is what I mean by scapegoating minorities. The root cause of that problem is a failed state, a collapsed state that cannot fulfill its first duty, not its first basic duty of keeping people safe, and instead scapegoats and targets vulnerable minorities. And the DA won't sit by and let that happen.
So, in spite of what we were told a day ago or so, that the provincial leader of the Democratic Alliance was in fact responsible for that poster, people like you do in fact support the message that was contained in that poster.
I didn't see the message until it was up. I didn't know anything about it. But what I'm telling you is
But from what you just said, you support it.
What I'm saying now...
Unequivocally.
What I'm saying now, unequivocally, and let me tell you what I am saying before you twist my words. What I am saying unequivocally is I reject the majority scapegoating a minority. I reject cut the throat of whiteness. I reject kill the Boer. I reject things like saying all Indians are racist. Because it is those kinds of things that leads to things like the Rwanda genocide and the Holocaust. I reject that for South Africa. The majority government is failing every single person in this country. They cannot fulfill their most basic responsibilities of keeping people safe. That's the primary job of the state. That's why it exists. It cannot even do that. And when people do that on their own, and obviously there's some vigilantism which we reject, but when people defend their lives and property on their own, they cannot be targeted by an overwhelming majority and a state that fails to do its job.
Do you reject or condone the poster you say you only saw when it was up? Do you, Helen Zille, reject or condone what you saw?
What I do reject is the ANC bringing down to nothing every single local authority in South Africa and all the media focusing on bringing a poster down. That is what I reject. It is absolutely double standards. And the bottom line is this: the DA will continue to stand up for everybody, every individual, every single individual in South Africa, and their right to be protected by a capable, accountable state. And when that state fails in its duty, and when it starts targeting vulnerable minorities and scapegoating people on the basis of their ethnicity and the color of their skin, the Democratic Alliance will stand up for them too. Thanks very much for your...
So you will not... You reject everything.
I support John Steenhuisen's actions on this, and I support the federal executive's actions on this. And if anybody thinks the DA is going to stop speaking for vulnerable, targeted minorities that are being targeted as scapegoats by a failing government, they're wrong. Thank you, Helen Zille.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
For a bit of perspective, let's bring in our panel of analysts for this evening. Professor Kwandiwe Kondlo is based at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Helen Zille is from the University of Stellenbosch. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for agreeing to come through this evening.
Thank you for you.
I'll start with you, Professor Kondlo. Just what you make. Let's start with the latter part of that conversation, the whole conversation around those Phoenix posters. Just what you make of what she had to say there.
Well, what I can say, based on my observation of Mrs. Helen Zille speaking, I could quickly pick up a very defensive, if I could say a bit of arrogance as well, which goes with it. It's not surprising, actually, because you must know, if you look at the history of the DA, which was the Democratic Party in the olden days, it's an organization which advances a certain liberal agenda. And at the heart of it, it's patronizing black people. I found the articulations she made very unengaging in the sense that, you see, racial minorities Helen is referring to, these are the people who were brutalized for decades by white racism, the white minority. She doesn't talk about that. So the major thing we should know is this around the ANC's failures and state failure. Yes, the ANC has made a lot of blunders, and we say it openly. But the kind of attack I listened to from Mrs. Helen Zille, it's not engaging, it's very superficial, and it's very defensive.
Professor Devil?
Thank you very much, Vuyo. Thank you for having me, and good evening to my colleague. I think for me, it is very clear that the DA's message is crumbling. When they started with this campaign and when they tried to respond to this particular issue, they tried to create a coherent view. But we are clearly seeing now that behind all of this, there was no sincerity in terms of saying that they are removing these posters because they've realized that they are actually promoting a vigilant group that is attacked, in some instances were informed, innocent people. And now all of a sudden, they want to shift the blame and put it to the majority party, which was not part of the poster itself. So it is clear to us that we are seeing the same DA try to change colors, but it is going back to its root, to isolate those who disagree with it, and to try to push a narrative that there is only the DA that can save this country. And it's unfortunate that we hear that.
What was interesting for me, Professor Kondlo, is how she kept quiet. I mean, she's not the one to keep quiet, you know, when she feels so strongly about something. And when I spoke to, a couple of people within the party, they too were rather surprised. And one wonders what could have been the strategy behind that. What did she put first before herself, as is often the case this time around?
Well, in my view, the DA has basically no strategy. You see, it's one organization which is confronted by a serious strategy dilemma. Hence, you find that it's just operational, trying this and trying that. But you can't get a sense of a clear, overarching strategy looking forward. You see, the problem which faces the DA, the major problem, is that there is the white constituency, some of it coming from the National Party, some of it very backward and racist, the white community, and its support base. And on the other hand, there is the black voter market, if I could use that term, which the DA tried under Helen Zille and especially also under Musi Maimane to penetrate this black voter market. And I must say, 2009, from 2009 actually, Helen Zille was actually doing very well getting into this black voter market. But the problem is, the more he gets into the black voter market, is the more he loses at the same time the historical white constituency, which has always been the basis of the Democratic Party, the basis of the Democratic Federal Party. You can go back in history to 1962. They have had a foundational white constituency. And this constituency, they don't want to part with, you see. And at the same time, if they are serious about power in South Africa, the DA needs serious support from the black constituency.
Well, I mean, if you had Prof, when talking earlier, I mean, when I was talking specifically about Nelson Mandela Bay, words where, you know, the vote has no color.
That's not true. Yes, the votes that we cast have no color, but the person who votes, you see. Listen, Vuyo, we relate as historical beings, besides just being individuals. I've got a number of white friends myself. These are very nice people at individual, interpersonal level. But I cannot say, because of that, there is no white racism, you see. And I cannot say, because of that, there are no blacks, there are no whites, I see no color. That's not true. That's rubbish. Racism, race is still a factor, is still a force in South African politics and in South African economy.
Professor Ndevu, I mean, she says, and she said this, I mean, repeatedly, that it is in fact not the DA, it is actually the ANC, she insists, that is targeting minorities. And they are standing up for those people who are being targeted.
I think the DA is really desperate in a manner in which they are addressing this particular issue. I will tell you why. They are desperate. They realize that if they do not marginalize or segregate people according to issues and race, they might not win the contest. So what they are doing basically is to say that anything that goes wrong, blame the ruling party. Anything that goes right, we are here to ensure that we continue with that. I mean, what has brought all this debate is not necessarily the failure of the ruling party, but it is a violent events that happened in June, and them putting a poster that says those who have committed these atrocities are heroes. I think that's what the issue is. Over a very long period of time, we know that KwaZulu-Natal is a very volatile environment. Over a very long time, there has been efforts from all political persuasion to ensure that there is social cohesion, to ensure that people can coexist. And you have a poster that promotes division, that promotes segregation of people according to their race. And that, to me, talks to a desperate strategy to win votes at all cost. Distraction to ensure that you emerge. And that's what the strategy that they've employed. Unfortunately, Ms. Zille has failed to defend that particular point. The fact that they are distracting a society that lived for a very long time beside each other without any conflict. And all of a sudden, because they want votes, they then say one particular part is correct over the other in terms of violence. And I think that is an unfortunate situation that should not be allowed to continue.
On the back, Professor Kondlo, of a, Mike Waters' resignation, who, as everyone in the DA would tell you, is one of her closest allies. Do you see this matter going away?
Are you talking about the matter of Mike Waters' resignation?
Yes, I mean the basis on which, like, he says he was shocked and horrified at the about 10 that the DA made, and what he calls a groveling apology and decision to take down the poster, saying that was appalling and a betrayal of heroes, he says, defended lives during the period of violence and looting. Can we expect, or do you think, we will see more and more people, now that Helen Zille herself has now spoken, the sort of diehards, coming out to actually defend her and defend Waters in the statements that they have both just made?
Look, I think this matter is still going to continue to be part of political debates in South African public space. I also don't think it will quickly disappear within the Democratic Alliance itself. And if there are any left-leaning groups within the DA, there's likely to be heated debates within the Democratic Alliance. And I can tell you that if there are any radical hotheads, we could even see a small group which will pull out and go join other political parties. That is why, in my view, besides this particular point, in my view, I've never had any imagination that the DA would one day be a governing party in South Africa. Not with the kind of strategic dilemma it still has. It can be a big opposition party, make big noise, draw the attention of business, but I don't really foresee a point where the DA becomes a governing party within South Africa. It has to deal with serious issues within itself before it can be ready to take over power in a liberated South Africa.
Professor Ndevu, where does this put John Steenhuisen? I mean, initially he defended the posters, later withdrew, and since then you've seen Mark Waters resigning. And then today, of course, from that interview, you're seeing that Helen Zille clearly stands with the likes of Mike Waters on this one. Where does that put the leader?
I think we're seeing a repeat of what happened with Mr. Mmusi Maimane. We never thought that this would happen during an election period where the DA is imploding internally, and as a result, a leader is being isolated. So you are seeing that the leftists within the DA are now regrouping again to say that when a particular position is taken, that supports the view or appraises the view of the minority within the DA, then they collide and stand together around that particular view. I think that's what we are seeing. And I'm likely going to see that Steenhuisen is going to be isolated. We might see the uproar and the revolt that we have seen with Mmusi Maimane after the elections. I think what brings them together now, what makes them try to consolidate, is because of the elections. But I can tell you, after the elections, the sparks are going to fly, and this issue is not going to be settled nicely within the DA itself. I think Steenhuisen might be the next casualty of leadership infighting, of ideological differences within the party itself. That's what I think would happen.
Well, Professors Ndevu and Kondlo are staying with us. After the break, a day hardly passes without ANC leaders being confronted by members who are unhappy with the way the party has managed its election candidate list. But will the party top brass be able to placate the disgruntled lot till after the election? What are the possible consequences if they don't? That discussion coming up after this short ad break. welcome back. This is the Watchdog. The spectre of election candidate lists continues to haunt the ANC's campaign. Everywhere their leaders go, they come to face to face with members who want them to deal with the problem and to deal with it now. At the party's manifesto launch on the 27th of last month, the unhappy wanted their presence felt, and since then they haven't taken any rest. 2 days ago in Bushbuckridge, Mpumalanga, Party Deputy President David Mabuza had his hands full. And yesterday in Tshwane, he and Party Deputy Secretary General had to meet with disgruntled members at a hotel to try and pacify them. Today in Gwagwa, in the Free State, he had to say something about the same matter.
We're going to attend to all these disputes. We're going to do a thorough job because we can smell a rat here. There are people that have interfered with a democratic process. But we cannot concentrate to that now. We're in the middle of the election campaign and we're requesting our structures to focus. Let's win the elections and we'll come back and deal with this problem.
Well, let's bring back analysts, Professors Gwandiwe Kondlo and Zwelinzima Ndevu. I'm starting with you, Prof. Ndevu, this time around. Is this line going to hold? Listen, guys, let's deal with the election, win the election, and we'll deal with this matter afterwards.
I think this is not really a new thing in the ANC. It has happened over time, and this narrative that, hold on, let's deal with the elections first, we will deal with these issues after the elections, was also the strategy that was used.
Okay, Prof, there are some gremlins. I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts right there so while we try and sort that sound a problem. But in the meantime, let me come to you, Professor Kondlo. Just what you make of this promise that they have to make every day, that we haven't forgotten about this matter. We are going to deal with it. Let's just win the election first and we'll deal with the matter afterwards. Professor Kondlo?
Yes, Vuyo, the likelihood, actually, if you look at surveys that have been done, the likelihood that the ANC is going to win again on the overall, the elections. They may drop by 2 or 3%, you see. But what's happening, Vuyo, you see, the ANC is institutionally robust, but internally disarticulate. And it's this internal disarticulation which is becoming the burden of leadership within the party. And unfortunately, what leaders do within the party is that they keep on piling promises. And promise which is not followed by any concrete delivery, actually it deepens anger and disgust amongst the people, you see. And as a result, I'm very worried because the ANC is digging its own grave. And its grave this grave will bury the ANC, and the people who will be involved in the ANC are the very same masses that the ANC keeps on going to, making promises, but delivering very little.
Professor Ndevu, I hope our sound issues have been sorted now. Just from listening to especially the top officials of the ANC, do you get a sense that there is both a strategy in how they are approaching this matter, but also a commitment, a firm one, that they will be able to deliver on later, that they will indeed be dealing with this matter? Or are they simply kicking the can down the road in the hope that, you know, at some point the situation will sort itself out?
I think we are seeing a leadership that is in control. And as a result of being in the panic mode, they are trying to really control the situation. And the only way they're doing that to control the situation is by using the rhetoric that they've used previously to say, hold on.
Okay, we seem to be having an even bigger problem. The line has actually gotten worse now. Prof. Kondro, let me bring you back once again. Does it sound to you like they have a strategy and they will deliver on the promise that they have been making?
Okay. Vuyo, the challenge here is to trust the ANC. An organization which has lost moral high ground, is very difficult to trust. The impression I have actually so far is that they are just trying to cross the line, which is the election, getting the votes, and winning local government elections. And after that, you watch, we're going to move slowly but surely back to pre-election time. The major problem you find amongst these guys in the ANC, it's greed, which has really taken over in the organization. Service delivery to poor communities is compromised every now and then. And the beneficial involvement of political elites in funding projects meant for the poor is becoming a trend in the ANC. This is actually very sad to see a liberation movement going down in this way. Cyril and his team are really trying, but he's not getting the full support and appreciation from his very comrades. It's becoming a culture in the ANC that you must have something, it doesn't matter how small, that you are doing behind curtains, but something which is against public regulations, which is against the law. It's becoming so common, it's becoming so fashionable. And these guys listen to us talking in your program, Vuyo, but they continue to do the same thing.
Prof. Ndevu, I hope we're fine now. ANC leaders say they are the only party, that has had a public participation process. And in all their efforts to, renew themselves, they have come up with this innovation, and it was bound to have teething problems, and they think that their membership will understand and put the big picture ahead of themselves and of everything. And after all the drama we're seeing now, they will be able to understand, and the leadership insists that it remains committed to ensuring that after the election, they will sort this problem out. And if there are people who got onto these lists fraudulently, those people, they will have to hold by-elections if need be, and they are prepared to go that route because their process of renewal is, as one of them put it, irreversible.
I think, Vuyo, we must give credit to the ANC, really. They have opened up the process. Their intentions were very clear to create a process that is people-driven, bottom-up approach, but they have identified these challenges themselves. It talks to an organization that is not able to put mechanism in place to ensure that the systems that they put in place functions optimally, and in events that there are glitches, then they are able to put intervention and remedial measures. But that has not happened. What we are hearing, in my view, is a strategy to say, let's get over these elections and we will try and be accountable where possible. And I'm saying where possible because going to a by-election, it is not a very easy faith one to take. So for me, in my view, it is clearly, I do not foresee them resolving all these disputes through by-elections. Some of them would actually be ignored depending on how loud the voices are. So I think, one, we should give credit to them for trying to put a system that allows for grassroots views to be absorbed in the system, to put candidates that are rooted within communities. But we clearly also know that within the ruling party itself, there are elements that have hijacked the system for their own narrow interest. And those elements seems to have succeeded in certain branches to get away with their own candidates. And now we have a system that cannot deal with those consequences, with those issues. And I foresee that after the elections, nobody would go back to these communities and engage with these. In fact, there would be no time. Immediately after election, the ANC would be worried about its elective conference. So I don't foresee in between that and by-elections happening. So that would not be something that would be done.
Quick one again, Prof. If there were elements that are determined, to if they can't get their way before the election, and then say they are determined to spoil things for the party, do you think that they will have the ability to actually spoil things in any fundamental or big way for the ANC?
I think the message has been very clear from the ANC, is that we do not ignore your views. We appreciate the fact that you have come forth. Give us an opportunity to go through an election process. We will deal with these issues after election. In that way, then you are convincing people to say, we are listening to your views, we are taking into consideration what you are saying, and you are avoiding a situation whereby people stay at home. In fact, they are going, because of this message, going to go out there and vote for the ruling party because they have at the back of their mind the idea that after the elections, these issues will be resolved. And for me and you, we would know that the likelihood of these issues resolved after the elections is very slim. And that's where this issue would end, in my view.
And that's where we're going to end it. Tonight, special thanks to Professors Kwandiwe Kondlo, based at the University of Johannesburg, and Professor Zwelinzima Ndevu, who is based at Stellenbosch University. Onto the campaign trail now. The Inkatha Freedom Party has become the second party in KwaZulu-Natal to make an about 10 after social media outrage over an election message. There was a furore after the party posted a picture of King Misuzulu Kazwelithini on its social media platforms, showing its support of traditional leadership. The party has since deleted the post and apologized to the king.
The IFP says this election infographic, as they term it, was meant to be a message of support for traditional leadership, but it caused an outcry on social media, with many users disapproving of the use of the image of the AmaZulu king as part of an election campaign. The IFP has since admitted the error and also apologized to His Majesty and the AmaZulu royal family. The party is also considering disciplinary action against party members responsible for the post.
This photo was erroneously used and would like to apologize for any inconvenience caused to His Majesty, the royal family, and to the traditional Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation and Monarch Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. The IFP remains steadfast in our continued support of traditional leadership as per South Africa's democratic dispensation, and disciplinary processes will be taken against the implicated staff member. The IFP regrets the error and wishes to assure the South African public of our continued respect of His Majesty the King.
The ANC was scathing in its criticism and sent out a media statement.
We are not surprised, first and foremost, by them using the picture of Miss Mtwana Misuzulu. The IFP has always abused traditional leadership. So the same has happened because they're trying to gain traditional support of the Zulu nation in the province, because they are realizing that as a political party on their own, they are not gaining the momentum of their campaign. So they are trying every dirty tricks to gain the support of the Zulu nation, as if they are the custodian of the Zulu nation when they are a political party, not anything else.
The AmaZulu Royal House also sent out a stern warning to all parties.
Office of the King wishes to state categorically that from time immemorial, the Zulu King and Indlunkulu Zulu has never been used to advance political ideology. This office humbly appeals to all political parties to refrain from using photos of the kings or any other royalty-related images in their election campaigns. The king has always been above politics. This is a warning to all political parties, otherwise this office might have to seek legal advice on this. Analysts
agree that it was wrong to use the image of the king as part of an election campaign.
No political party that is supposed to use the picture of the Zulu King in its political activities, including election campaigns for the forthcoming local government elections. So in that context, I would say that the concern raised by the ANC is indeed justifiable.
This latest controversy involving the IFP follows the DA's poster debacle, which forced the party to pull down its election posters in Phoenix. Mlondi Khateb, SABC News, Durban.
The Good Party says it has full confidence in being the third largest political party in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro after the local government elections. Good mayoral candidate Lawrence Tron embarked on a campaign trail in the Ward 37 of the Metro today. Tron says the party aims to prioritize the needs of those living in indigent households. Luando Nomoi has that story.
The door-to-door campaign is done differently by the Good Party. While on the campaign trail, the party delivers services to residents. The party hopes to expand its footprint in the northern areas of Gqeberha.
Our communities have been complaining so much about all of the sewage, that's in the yards, that's in the street. And many of the concerned like business people, they came to us, they told us, listen here, Truan, what we'll do, we'll fund you guys in terms of the transport that we have. We've got plumbers here also, like from our community. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be going to one of the houses in Candlebush Street. They've reported that like sewage there for the last month or two. The municipality has done nothing yet, And what we've said, we'll take it upon ourselves to clean all of these block drains like within the municipality.
The party will be contesting 40 out of 60 wards in the metro. Some residents of Ward 37 have thrown their weight behind the party.
Good has opened the door for me again. After 4 years of living here in Ward 37, I am able to stand upright for my children. I feel Good is a good party that will create more opportunities for people living here in Ward 37.
Meer geleenthede vir die mense sal skep in Ward 37. Ek het 'n ma wat oud is, sy is raak 78.
I have a mother who's turning 78. I will work and look after her and a bunch of children. I will open my life now and have my way forward. I have been dealt my cards I suffered while in prison.
The party says this type of campaigning is an indication that they will deliver services to the people. Luando Nomoi, SABC News, Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape.
ATM leader Vuyelwethu Zungula has committed to prioritize the needs of the people should his party be voted into power in Emfuleni municipality. Zungula took his election campaign to Sebokeng, where locals told him they need electricity, among other things. Emfuleni is currently governed by the ANC. Abongile Dumako went along.
A community seeking assistance from those in positions of power. Locals here in Sebokeng say all they need is access to proper services from the Emfuleni municipality. The ATM hearing firsthand what are some of the challenges locals are facing here.
We are crying to our government here. Hear us out, we are struggling.
I think now it's 26 years.
We need services here. It's been 26 years since we arrived here. Please let us have access to services.
2018
We will be voting in these elections. We hope it will be worth it this time around.
ATM says these challenges didn't fall onto deaf ears. Help will come to their doorstep should they be voted into power.
We understand that the people had a lot of issues and they did not get the proper service delivered from the current party. We are here part of the communities, and we are not saying you must be outside. We are saying to the people they must be inside, because only when we work together as a people, only when we as a people rise, we are going to change the situations for our people.
The party says it has already begun negotiations with the APC under the leadership of Themba Godi in case there is a need for a coalition or partnership after the elections. Abongile Tumako, SABC News, Mfuleni, Gauteng.
And what would be an election campaign without gaffes? Well, one of the latest doing the rounds is from a video of an EFF supporter on stage at a party rally singing the praises of another. No, let me not spoil the fun. Take a look. And that's our show for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow. Have a good night.